What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So yet another one that came out on the 6th of October that I did want to go over was the latest offering from Carnifex, Necromanteum. Again, this also comes out on the 6th of October on Nuclear Blast Records. This band formed in 2005 in San Diego County, California. This is their 9th album overall. We actually reviewed Graveside Confessions, or rather Miller and John did. I was not available for that one. And for those that don't know, this is a flat-out deathcore band, and deathcore and proud. In fact, you know, in interviews I've seen, they don't take deathcore as a slight when they are called deathcore. They own it, and I kind of got respect for that. And honestly, I've been listening to this band for a while. I got into them around The Diseased and The Poisoned, and I thought that one was okay. Honestly, it wasn't until Hell Chose Me that I thought the band was really coming on their own, and at that point I was really into deathcore and kind of gradually moved away from it. But regardless, I will say this band is absolutely killer live. I've seen them 3 times. Granted, all those times were because they were on the bill and they weren't the main draw. There were other bands that I wanted to see, but every time I saw them, they put on a killer show. And again, I do deathcore reviews because every now and then a deathcore band does something really interesting that I like. And granted, that is a little bit more rare here lately. I still want to check it out and give it a fair shake. I know there's probably already some people watching going, oh no, Nick's about to shit all over a deathcore band, album, whatever. And maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. You'll find out towards the end of this review, or maybe around the midpoint, who knows. Anyway, this is straight up deathcore. I will admit that Carnifex's approach is maybe a little bit different, where they kind of employ like a darker side of it. Like, they are the spookier deathcore band. There's a lot of black metal accents to their stuff, and you have big synths and everything on there, and like more of a haunting atmosphere that they go for. But the main thing that this band does, and has been doing well over the course of 9 albums, debatably if you're a fan or not, is being just absolutely crushingly heavy, and that is definitely on display in this album. Waste no time with Torn in Two. Opens right up into just furious blast, massive chugging, you know, vocals that are both high and low and occasionally layered, and honestly pretty well done. Scott Lewis has a really solid voice. I mean, it is kind of that stereotypical deathcore style, but it's well executed, and he picks his flips really well in terms of going from high to low, and even the layering is pretty cool. It's not done all the time, which is generally a gripe of mine, where you have a constantly layered vocal approach, and that just does not seem to translate very well live. It's only done kind of sparingly and done to enhance moments, like namely breakdowns, which this is a deathcore album. You bet your ass there's breakdowns. And I will say, if you are a longtime Carnifex fan, you are going to get a Carnifex album. This is definitely that. Again, it is heavy through and through. I do like when they kind of break out of their formula, because this band definitely has kind of a formula. Their sound has only changed in like minor increments over their career, but the introduction of more blackened elements on here, sometimes I think it works really well. Torn in Two has some intermittent sections of like blackened tremolos, or a little bit colder, but the one where it really stands out is Crown in Everblack, which almost makes you think it's like a little bit of a nod to Black Dahlia Murder. The last time I saw Carnifex was on what I imagine was the last tour with Trevor fronting Black Dahlia Murder. And despite that being both a good and a bad memory just because of everything that happened, Carnifex put on a hell of a show that night. And this song is definitely more black metal centric, at least for most of it. You have great melodies on it. There are some excellent tremolo harmonies. It's cold, it's icy, it feels dark and epic at times. There's some really cool clean breaks in the music to kind of let the atmosphere settle down and then build back up. And honestly, the lead work on that song I think is really good. And honestly, the lead work on most of this album is really solid. Most of the leads are very short, but they're generally very tasteful on here, and they really cut through the mix really well, which the production on here is very polished. It is very much akin to a lot of deathcore releases. This was, I believe, produced by the band and Jason Sukoff, who has done a lot of cool stuff in the past, and this kind of sounds like the stuff that he does. It is very polished, bordering on overproduced at times, but it sounds good for the style. Like, this is kind of what I expect from deathcore production. It's generally a little bit more polished than, say, death metal or black metal, so this at least fits. Another big standout for me was How the Knife Gets Twisted, which, if you're a Napalm Death fan, you know the answer is slowly. But that song opens up with some cool triplet chugs. There's a nice groovy section, but this song kind of does something that other songs here really don't. It gets kind of epic and bright. There's some really cool soaring guitar melodies on there and some awesome lead harmonies. Honestly, it's probably the most melodic track on the album. And honestly, this is one of the songs where they kind of play down one of the main elements for deathcore, the breakdowns. The breakdowns feel kind of secondary in the song. It's more focused on the melodies and that sort of soaring, triumphant atmosphere. Even the vocals actually kind of lend themselves to that triumphant sort of vibe, despite being harsh as hell. And the song Bleed More, there's some elements of tech death on there. Like the opening is this really cool flurry of more technical riffs, you know, stuff that you don't necessarily hear on the rest of the album. Like granted, they are intricate, they are fast, they are chuggy, but here they feel like a little bit more technical and a little bit more, I don't know, like angular and twisted. And honestly, that kind of, you know, makes the song stand out a little bit because, well, I mean, this album kind of rinses and repeats quite a bit. Now, I will say that there are solid riffs all throughout this album. But one of my main issues on here is one of the most prevalent things on the album and in deathcore in general, and it's the breakdowns. The breakdowns, I think, are decent to kind of stock on here. And when you hear these kind of more stock breakdowns in songs that are otherwise a little bit more creative, they really stand out. Crowned in Everblack, I think, is an awesome song, minus the breakdowns. Every time, the blackened elements really start to hit a fever pitch, it seems like they kind of just go to the breakdown well and pepper in a breakdown that has popped up on probably a bunch of their albums before and a ton of other deathcore albums out there. Same thing with Infinite Night Terror. There's some excellent brutal riffs on there that actually have some cool character to them, and then it kind of just segues into a dumb but admittedly super heavy breakdown. After a while, it just starts taking away from the elements that actually stand out in the song, because you're hearing that same kind of repetitive breakdown that you've been hearing since like 2005, just kind of shoehorned in songs that definitely want to do something a little bit different or show off a different aspect of the band's sound. Now, that isn't my only complaint, because this album does feature a fair amount of synth work, and with synths, I'm kind of hit or miss. Most of the time I like that more horror atmosphere, and well, this band definitely wanted to go for horror atmosphere, but it kind of borders on symphonic deathcore. Like, it kind of gets a little Lorna Shore-ish, especially in the last track, Heaven and Hell All at Once, which pretty much was a combination of both the things that I didn't necessarily like about this album, the basic breakdowns and then the big symphonic elements that just kind of come across as cheesy. Like, I know they want to make this sound spooky and unsettling, like they want something like The Exorcist or The Omen, but honestly it kind of comes across as like Disney's The Haunted Mansion, and yeah, it's the one with Eddie Murphy. Most of the synths on here just kind of feel cheesy, and they're kind of like diametrically opposed to their style for the most part, because a lot of this is just brutal and aggressive and in your face and about bone crunching breakdowns and riffs, and then you have this sort of ghostly wailing in the background. For me, it kind of became like the deathcore equivalent to a trip to Spirit of Halloween. I like that store, but I don't want it in my deathcore. And that symphonic aspect alone really makes this album sound bloated and overproduced at times. Tom Barber from Chelsea Grin is actually on Death's Forgotten Children, and for the life of me, I really couldn't pick him out there because there's so much going on in that track with these ghostly wails in the background and like whooshing noises, and of course like the pummeling riffs, and you already have Scott's vocals, which are very loud and heavy anyway. It's really just kind of hard to pick them out. Plus, Tom Barber doesn't necessarily have like a very distinct deathcore growl anyway, so it just kind of came across as layering. But yeah, overall, this album definitely has some strong points, some stuff that I do like, but for me personally, a lot of it just kind of feels dated. And with the more prominent synths, because they weren't always big on like the spooky atmosphere and synths and kind of symphonic elements, like that is definitely a more recent turn in their sound. It kind of just sounds a little dated. Like, I like the fact that they have stuck to their guns and they have maintained all that deathcore aggression and really stuck to that style, but it really hasn't changed that much over the years, and my interest in the style, it kind of wanes when I hear stuff like this. So overall, I'm gonna give this 2.5 stars. It's okay. I mean, it's not like absolutely terrible, it's not the worst thing I've heard, but at the same time, I think it's just a pretty safe release. Like, yeah, there's, you know, some nice standout moments here and there, but they go to the well a lot, and that well is full of breakdowns. And kind of the same ones. Like, honestly, the breakdowns themselves don't necessarily stand out from one another. I do think the lead work on here is really solid. Scott's vocals are really good. The drum work is actually really good too. I mean, I think you have to be a pretty solid drummer to be a deathcore drummer. And I even think some of these songs without, you know, some of the more prominent core elements could actually be like a little bit more memorable. But a lot of this just kind of got repetitive, and again, with the overproduction and all the synths and everything, it kind of got boring. But that's just me. Honestly, if you're a longtime Carnifex fan, I'm sure you'll probably dig this. I mean, if you like stuff like Aborted, Whitechapel, maybe even Chelsea Grin. To be perfectly honest, I think it's better than Chelsea Grin, but it's kind of in that same ilk. Definitely check this out. Give it a chance. Form your own opinions. You might really dig this. This might be your new favorite album. You won't know until you check it out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsofmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It's also on our channel. But thrallsofmetal.com actually has our store, which has shirts. We have new shirts. We have old shirts that are at a discounted price. We also have hats now. So if you would like to get some of our stuff, that is exactly where to find it. And of course, thank you guys so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It means the world to us. It's still absolutely awesome to do this, and we've been doing it for damn near 5 years now. And honestly, I still dig it. Even if the album that I'm reviewing really isn't my thing, I still really enjoy doing this, and I still love talking to you guys in the comments. So once again, big thank you to you guys, and we will catch you later.